Hello, I'm State Representative Andy Thompson from the 95th House District. Welcome to Ohio in Focus.
Hello and welcome to this edition of Ohio in Focus, a program that brings state government to you. I'm your host, Brad Miller. Today I'm talking with State Representative Andy Thompson, who serves the 95th House District, which includes Carroll, Harrison, and Noble counties, as well as portions of Washington and Belmont counties. Representative, thanks for sitting down with us today.
Great to be with you, Brad.
So the House of Representatives recently passed the budget bill, and it's now being considered in the Senate. What are some of your takeaways and observations of the House version of the budget bill?
Well, I think we continued down the path to reducing taxes. There's a $1.5 billion two-year tax cut for Ohioans, and so that's a good down payment on the things that we've done to reform the budget. And it was, based on work that we've done over the past couple of years, it's laid the groundwork for what we call a recovery budget. So we're continuing the path of reform. We're looking at the healthcare area, ways that we can get people back to work. That's very important, and I think it's a strong component of workforce development in this budget. Some additional things in healthcare as well, where we can continue on Passport and some of the programs that we know have been very, very effective. In education, there's a degree completion component where we're trying to encourage more people to experience success as they're doing their secondary education and post-secondary education. And just, again, trying to make government more efficient. I think that's what the taxpayers expect, and that's what this budget is all about.
One thing that made this process a little different this year is that it was the first time that a committee hearing or committee hearings were heard and streamed online. And also testimony, links to that was posted online. How did that impact the legislative process and the committee process?
Well, I think there's always a concern that when the cameras are on, like they are now, that sometimes people's behavior change. But I think what's happened is it's transparency. It's how that we bring government home to the people and allow people either at their home computers or, frankly, legislators themselves and their aides to follow this process. It's not the only thing we do here, so those of us who aren't on Finance Committee are busy with meetings and committee hearings and other things that we have going on, but it allows us to sneak a peek if we can't be there in person. It certainly allows our constituents to be more involved. If they can't come to Columbus, they can watch it remotely. So I think it's a real step forward. Technology is being employed more and more in the Ohio House. I was on the Ag Committee, and we were the first ones to bring iPads into committee, and that cuts down on the paper costs and, again, helps us to be more up to speed and probably much more in touch with what our constituents are experiencing, whether it's on their smartphones or on their tablets.
What has the response been like? Mostly positive, I'm sure, from
Pretty much positive. I don't know that we've had a ton of calls at the office, but we get some written responses and written comments from people saying that they're pleased that we're doing this. And I applaud Ron Amstutz, who does an amazing job as our finance chair and certainly is no opponent of employing technology wherever we can to bring the taxpayer better value.
Another important issue, especially in your portion of the state, is the development of oil and natural gas. Can you give us a kind of a snapshot of your district, because your district is kind of on the front lines of this issue?
Certainly is. In my newly redesigned district, which we're all experiencing now as members of the 130th General Assembly, I would say 70 to 80% of the good productive wells in the state of Ohio. Carroll County is ground zero. There have been more wells completed and drilled in Carroll County. It's had a tremendous impact on wealth in the county. I think the latest figure is 550 new millionaires in Carroll County alone. So that tells you a little bit about the type of prosperity it's bringing. But it's also bringing a broad, diverse array of new jobs. I think 38,000 was the figure of new jobs created so far, upstream, midstream, and downstream. It's affecting retailers. We've got new hotels being built. We've got restaurants being built. We've got trucking companies doing better than they have. We have aggregates companies. We have all kinds of pipeline manufacturers. And the challenge, again, is going to be workforce development. How can we, in these counties where we've lost population over the last several years, how do we find the workforce that we need to complete these tasks? And that's going to require, in my conversations I've had with the governor, a recruitment effort to get Ohioans who have left Ohio to come back here and be part of what we think is going to be a fantastic economic opportunity.
That was actually our next line of
Okay,
discussion.
sorry to get ahead of me.
That's quite all right. Workforce and economic development. Last summer, you served on a workforce study committee that traveled throughout the state. What did you learn from that experience, and where is Ohio strong and where are its weaknesses?
Yeah. I think one of the things that we found in the course of that committee was that we had a plethora of programs. It wasn't a lack of government programs. As a matter of fact, I believe the figure was 72 programs that were underway at the same time. And we realized that we needed to streamline that. I had an amendment into the mid-biennium budget that was reorganizing the whole workforce committee that we have that oversees workforce development. And then we realized that, again, it's facilitating that communication between our educational institutions and industry. We needed to make sure that that was working. We needed to make sure that the one-stops, the job and family services, that it was, again, reflective of current needs. When you have 72 programs, you know that that's happened over many, many years. And I think what we'll do going forward is to have metrics that demonstrate whether these programs are effective before we add a new one or disband an old one. And so that was one of the things that was desperately needed. And then in my area, it's kind of unique in terms of the workforce needs. We have programs that had been disbanded in some of the career centers. I noticed, I took a tour recently in Belmont County, and they had disbanded their welding program. Well, now they need lots of welders. So they have 17 new kids in the program, and it's only going to expand. So we have tremendous, sometimes you can do workforce reform and you can do workforce training, but if you don't have jobs to put those people into, you're going to be disappointed. We have employment demand, and so we have a need, and we're identifying those needs through our workforce reform efforts, and then we're going to put people to work. And some of these young people can go to work at $60,000, $70,000 a year starting out. So that gives you an idea of how the dynamics are changing. And we'd like to see this in the rest of Ohio, because the rest of Ohio is participating in this oil and gas shale development as well. I heard a commercial on the radio on my way up from Lorain, and U.S. Steel is up there, and they're sending new employees and employing more people because of the need for U.S. manufactured steel in the pipeline manufacturing. So we have so many opportunities to help the entire state, because each county, in a sense, can play a role in supplying this industry. So it's a fantastic opportunity for my district, but it's also an opportunity for all of Ohio. And if you take a part of the state that's been underperforming for many, many years and make it successful, that's got to be great for all of Ohio.
Right. So would you say that the fact that, particularly in your district, that the development of oil and natural gas has sort of highlighted the need to improve the state's workforce training system?
Yes, yeah, I think so. I mean, I think, again, sometimes maybe bureaucratically we get going down a certain route, and then we don't look back and see what the results are. And as we were doing our task force around the state, I was asking, what metrics do you have? I think it was the Director of Job and Family Services. What metrics do you have to see if you're successful, if you're getting people out of poverty and into work? And my sense was they really didn't have a lot of metrics for to account for federal funds that had come in, or even the state funds that had come in. So we knew that we know that we can do better. And again, with this opportunity, with real jobs that need to be filled, and we have thousands of skilled jobs across the state. The governor has alluded to that on many occasions. We need to find the proper training that's needed, and then allow those people to go out into the workforce. And we need to bring people in from elsewhere, hopefully, again, expatriate Ohioans who would like to come back to their hometown, raise their family, and experience real opportunity.
Moving along to some specific legislation that you have sponsored, one that we're going to talk about is House Bill 6. Might be important to lay out some definitions.
Sure.
House Bill 6 deals with agreed upon procedure audits.
Yeah,
What are those?
and they may be referred to as audits or engagements, and probably in the proper CPA terminology. This is, a lot of local municipalities, all levels of government go through audits with the state auditor. Some cases they hire private CPA firms to do that, private auditing firms. But this is to provide a reduced audit for certain subdivisions. If they have a budget of less than $5 million in expenses, they would qualify qualify for a reduced audit under this legislation. It can often cut the cost in half, or maybe even more. And so when you're these smaller entities, and it could be a village, it could be an agricultural society. It could be sewer and water districts. They have, they go through this audit process, and it's not inexpensive. I mean, it can be substantial. And so what we wanted to do with this bill is say, if you perform well, you'll be rewarded for that. And it's at the discretion of the auditor to figure out who qualifies here. But we do lay out in the legislation specific entities. And this is something that was developed originally under Auditor Mary Taylor. And we were working on a bill for the last couple years. And then in response to Auditor Dave Yost, who had a press conference last year and talked about agreed upon procedures, engagements, we came up with legislation. And my joint sponsor is Doug Green, and he's a new legislator, but he brings a wealth of auditing experience because he's been an auditor in his county. So again, it's great for me to team up with him, and it's great for us to save local government money because there have been concerns about local government and the resources they have. If we can allow them to save more of the resources they have, they can employ it more efficiently for their taxpayers.
Now, when we talk about audits, we're obviously talking about accountability and transparency of government as well. What does this bill do to kind of protect that also?
Well, the auditor will still have certain specifications that help him determine whether this entity is qualified. They need to come up clean, obviously, in past audits. They need to not have any serious findings against them. You can't have the change in the fiscal officer because that could sometimes, that could indicate that things are going to be done differently. So they want a track record. And then they want this entity to perform well during the first 2 years of that agreed upon procedures engagement so that the following period can work as well. There are different audit periods based on the entity we're talking about. Some have every year, some have every 2 years. But if they qualified for this and they perform well in the first year, they would certainly get the second year or the second 2 years. If they don't, however, it's at the auditor's discretion to say, listen, we need to take a deeper look at this. And it's not required. These entities don't have to do agreed upon procedures audits if they want to reassure bondholders or anybody else who has a financial concern in their operations. But what I think it is it's, and we've not encountered really any concern in committee. As a matter of fact, some of them have said we'd like a higher threshold. But what we're trying to demonstrate with this bill is that $5 million is a level that has not an inappropriate level of risk that these entities can perform, and we can reassure taxpayers that we continuing to offer the proper scrutiny, but also looking to save local government money if they perform. And so it's that important component. We've got a carrot for them, we've got a reward for them if they perform, and also, but we maintain the proper scrutiny that's needed to reassure them.
And finally, a very important issue, one that has been on the forefront of American minds and the news for going on 4 years now, is the federal health care law signed by President Obama in 2009. You sponsored House Bill 91 called the Healthcare Freedom Act. Can you elaborate how this legislation works and what it aims to accomplish?
Yeah. Well, Ohioans passed the Healthcare Freedom Amendment overwhelmingly. I think it was close to 66%, and that was issue 3 I believe it was a couple years ago. And so this was again continuing to defend that verdict that the Ohio voters had made, but also in this case what we're doing is to try to stop the implementation of Obamacare in Ohio. And what it says is, under the president's health care plan, and this was actually written into the plan, states retain the discretion for regulating their insurance industry. And so what we're saying is there are subsidies under Obamacare that pass through insurance entities to individuals and businesses. And it's those subsidies that trigger the penalties under the president's health care plan. So what we're saying to insurance entities is, if you pass those subsidies along, we will not allow you to continue doing business in the state of Ohio. Your past business is okay, but if it's business that involves implementation of the president's health care plan, you will no longer be in good standing in the state of Ohio. And again, the broader goal of this is to protect Ohioans' health care freedom, but also to recognize that the insurance industry, the healthcare industry, all of this is going to be profoundly affected by the president's healthcare plan. And I think there's a likelihood that that healthcare plan is going to collapse before it is ever fully implemented, just because of all the problems they're having administratively. So we want to protect Ohioans' healthcare freedom. This is a bill that does an excellent job of that. We had 19 co-sponsors in the House, so we have a strong level of support. And I would encourage viewers who support us in this initiative to call in and let folks know. And also I'd encourage more of my colleagues to get on board, because I can't think of an issue that's more important fundamentally for small business and the effects that it has for individuals and for our healthcare system, which is the greatest in the world. We don't want to see that destroyed. And if we can make Ohio a barrier against this, I think that's a great thing that we can do for our constituents.
We have just a little bit of time left. We usually like to end with you telling your constituents how they can best contact you.
Okay. I encourage you to contact my office, 614-644-8728. You can also reach me at rep95@ohiohouse.gov. And I encourage you to contact my office and my aide, Mike Sabo.
Representative Thompson, thanks for sitting down with us today.
Thank you so much.
We look forward to seeing you again on the next edition of Ohio in Focus, the program that brings state government to you. Thank you for joining us.